I'm recording. Welcome to What is Health? I'm Jason and I'm with Dick Shand. And thanks for agreeing to come in to speak to me about health and your perspective of that. I've just realised I've got the transcription on, so I'm just going to switch that off because that will get super annoying. Yeah, anyway, so it's always a bit clunky when I start these kinds of discussions, but I think a good place to start I found with people is just to find out a little bit about them as their younger selves. What were you like if I had met you in your youth? What would you have presented as?
Mad keen on sport, not the sharpest tool in the drawer, but one that worked very hard. Would probably describe me quite well.
I found out we had a tenuous link as well. I don't know if you'll remember him, but Tom was talking about you in the office. I should explain actually to the audience the context of this is that I work with your son, and we've been having a great time sort of like providing teaching to the students. And but also there's someone here called Joe Ellis Gage, and apparently you used to support him with rugby.
Okay, I can't put a face to the name, but the name does ring a bell somewhere over here.
Yeah.
Was I his coach or was he a referee?
I think so.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. He was telling me a story about when you were coaching him. Going back to, you said you weren't the sharpest tool in the box. Can you just qualify that a little bit for me?
Okay, I went to a boarding school which had very streamed classes, okay, quite small classes, and it went alpha A B C D E in terms of streaming, alpha being top and E being bottom. Alpha were typically the scholarship students, A were failed scholarship students and bright people, and me. And in certain subjects, specifically mathematics, and the irony of this is I'm a chartered accountant, I found mathematics at A level incredibly difficult.
Right.
And I came consistently bottom of the class until one of my friends got glandular fever for the entire term. So instead of being bottom, I was second to bottom because it wasn't. I got promoted. No, I speak fluent French. I've qualified as a chartered accountant. I've got a master's degree in accounting, etc., etc. But I know what clever people look like and what they sound like, and I'm not one of them. Okay, I've worked with. I've had the privilege to work with some really clever people in my life.
Right.
And somehow they make difficult things look effortless. But no, that's the context. I think most of us would, if we were honest about ourselves, would say we're not the sharpest tool in the drawer, but we're a tool in the drawer that's required.
I think I agree, because I think I identify with what you're saying in that I was in the sort of bottom set in school, but I always made up for it in effort. Like I had this drive and effort that I noticed that if I sort of applied that, it made up an awful lot of deficit, or what I perceived as deficit. I don't know if that's true. What you talk about boarding school? What was that in terms of like an experience for you as a child? I suppose I've got a particular perception of it that I'm sure is quite wrong. What was it like for you?
Okay, I'll give you two perceptions. My younger brother, who's 3 years younger than me, who's not sporty, but very gregarious, versus me, very sporty and somewhat cantankerous, to tell the truth. I did pretty well at boarding school. It is my environment. It's sort of, it was sport all the time. Had a combined cadet force. If you go back to the 19th century, it provided civil servants and soldiers to the East India Company, etc., etc. Okay, long history and so forth. So basically, a reasonably tough. I'm going to use the word brutal is too strong, but an uncompromising environment. You went there and you suddenly realize, oh shit, this place doesn't have lots of caring going on. You just have to get on with it. And the school was run by the 18-year-olds, the sixth form. So when you're 13 years old and you encounter a guy that's 6'4" umpteen stone and you're 13 years old, you stare at your shoelaces. You do not get involved, otherwise you get whacked. Just 1 second. One second, please.
Yeah. You're all right.
Stephen. Hi, I'm in the middle of a Zoom, so what's the time frame? An hour and a half from now. That will work fine. Terrific. Thank you. Bye.
Love it.
So it was quite a tough environment, but if you were good at sport, you I wouldn't say put on a pedestal, but it was easier. And every single day we did sport. Every single day. And in the winter that meant rugby. In the spring that meant hockey, cross-country running, squash, that kind of thing. In the summer was sort of cricket, running, athletics, outdoor, sort of a Baden-Powell-esque world. The rumours of horrid abuse and homosexuality, well, if there was any, I wasn't on the receiving end of it, and I didn't give any either. So it was a tough place, and it made you extremely self-resilient.
Right.
My brother, who's not particularly sporty, but a gregarious person, sailed through boarding school in a totally different way to me, and we both laugh about it. We don't sit there going, "Oh, those are the best days of my life." No, they weren't, but they were extremely formative. And from the point of view, and I haven't really mentioned the education, but we had some first-class teachers. Unlike a day boy who comes home and gets fed by his parents, looked after, and so forth. It's a bit like a prison camp. You get up in the morning, a bell goes off, you get up in the morning, you shower, you go to breakfast with a gazillion other people, you then go to chapel, you then go to class until 1 o'clock, and then there's lunch, and 2:15 or something you do sport until 4:30, you then shower, you go back, afternoon lessons, then there's supper, and then there's prep for the next couple of hours. So you don't have any much time to think about not doing what you have to do. Yes, there was a little bit of time off from time to time, but not much. And I don't want it to sound like a Butlins camp. I don't want it to sound like a prison camp, but it was, in terms of, and back to the original subject, health. I'm very lucky. I did lots of sports, so I built myself up that way. We didn't have weights, all that kind of stuff. We were greyhounds. We ran and so forth. If you compare a modern day Colts rugby side, they're huge. They would muller us, but we could run like crazy. What
was it about sport? What grabbed you? Was it that you had to do it, or was there something that you really liked it and enjoyed it? What did it give you?
I'm good at it.
Ah, okay. Yeah. I had a similar moment. I realised in sport the only contingent was I had to try harder and I had to hurt myself more than the other person, and I could be good at it. And that, I remember it. It was Stuart Bolter in the 400-meter sprint, and Stuart Bolter was the most handsome, successful young man you could be sort of compared to. And I remember just thinking, I just have to hurt myself and run faster, and he still beat me. But like, it was that feeling of like, I've got control over this. I don't know. Yeah.
No, well, I'm glad you raised the running part, because I remember being at supper with a bunch of old mates, maybe 30 years ago, all rugby players, okay? And somebody raised the question, if we had our time over again, what would you like? And most of them talked about being bigger, stronger, what have you. I went, no, I would like speed. I would like just sheer, outright, bloody speed. And this chap Bolty referred to, I mean, he put him on a sports pitch, he'd be electric. He'd be so much faster than everything else. Yeah. And so I'm fast enough, but compared to the fast boys, leave me for dead. And when I played rugby, and I'd like say now as a referee, one of the things I enjoy is a referee. I was quite a senior referee, and then I retired, so I referee youth at the weekends in Norfolk. And I like to spot the fastest kid on the park, and are they using it right? And if they're using it right, this kid goes, wow, and he just does it with sheer speed. He might be hopeless and everything else, but or he or she, by the way, it's cool. It's cool. So why do sport? I love sport. I just got on with it. My father introduced me to rugby. My grandfather introduced me to cricket and golf. And it's sort of in the genes. My parents were both fairly sporty. They didn't do a huge amount of sport after marriage, but that was kind of the era. And I just loved it. The contrast with my brother, who's has a astigmatism in his eye, isn't particularly well balanced and so forth. He didn't do much sport, but he enjoys his life nonetheless.
What about the refereeing? What drew you to the refereeing?
Oh, it's really simple. There comes a certain point in anybody's rugby career that they tend to go into coaching because you get old. Yeah. And I was coaching some youth sides, and coaching involves refereeing training games. And I was refereeing a training game, and there was a referee on the side, a real one. And he said, "You're quite good. You want to join the society?" And I thought, well, yeah, I'll do that. And I discovered, much to my intense annoyance, that I was really quite a good referee, and I'd started far too late ever to make it to Twickenham.
Oh.
Well, no, but okay, it is what it is. And I got to the highest level that I could possibly get for my age group, because there are limitations that they won't put someone. I got to the top amateur level, which meant I was traveling the country for amateur games at 55. Most people make it at 35, if that.
Sweet.
Just back to your point of working harder. I worked harder. I did lots and lots of games. I got good reports, and you know from your sporting world, if you're grown up, you're coached and you can take the input, and someone says you did that badly, or they might have said, would you think about doing it differently? Yeah? And for me to be on a sports park trying to control 30 testosterone filled people traveling the country, it was a very interesting. It's not only interesting from a physical point of view, but it's most interesting psychologically, because unlike a team which have got all their mates and you've got coaches and physios and supporters and you're on your own. You know, I traveled to Portsmouth for a game of rugby, on my own. So it's like a 4-hour drive. Yeah, you get there on time, have a bite to eat, cup of tea, and then you go out, you inspect things, you can see players, and suddenly the ground starts filling up with people. Now, I'm not talking about tens of thousands, hundreds. Yeah, and you realise that your job is to manage this group of people, yet not stop it, manage a different mentality. Yeah. And nobody's there going, "You're right, you're going well." You have an assessor for the away games, and after the game, you have a beer with the assessor, and he tells you what you did right, what you did wrong, and writes a report on you, and that progresses you. And then you now got a 4-hour drive home. And that 4-hour drive home, I'm not saying it's emotional, it isn't. It's you just. I remember after games, people would say to me, "Do you remember such and such?" No. My brain's just completely. I could barely speak after a game. Even now, if it's a really intense game, I could barely speak because of the concentration. An hour later.
Yeah, I was going to say it must be really cognitive. Like whenever I'm watching a team sport and I watch the referee, I have this pool of anxiety when I'm watching it. And I just think, how do you maintain that level of concentration for that period of time?
Extremely difficult. And it's well known that particularly at the beginning of the second half, you have a concentration lapse. Yeah. So it's coming. Each one of us has his lapse at a different time. It's not precise. So it's coming, and you have to push yourself harder, think harder, really concentrate. I mean, it's an interesting thing being a referee, because you can. It's a prosaic remark, because you can only referee what's in front of you. But that means something over the other side a spectator might see and you won't, and they can get quite cross about such things. Okay,
you're held to quite a high level of perfection as well, aren't you? Especially in like the professional game. But I remember when I was playing hockey, I used to play hockey, and you'd have the observers would be incredibly quick to point out if there was a mistake by the referee. How do you deal with that?
An assessor. Okay. If I've made a mistake, generally I know I've made a mistake.
Right.
Yep. Okay. I remember going to Stockport for a game, and I was staying with my parents-in-law, who lived not too far away in Heysham. And that morning, my father-in-law had a turn and was whisked off to hospital. Okay. So I am now psychologically in the wrong place to be refereeing a game calmly. Okay. And I missed something in the first minute of the game. And that particular coach was on my back for the next 79 minutes. Okay. Now, and the assessor afterwards said, I went, yeah. And I explained what happened. He went, well, you should have cried off the game. I said, at such short notice, who's going to fill it in? He goes, well, that's a good point. Well, thank you for coming. And I went, well, I'm not looking for excuses, but that's what happened to me this morning. And now I've got to go back to the house and hope he's survived. Although I did know he'd survived by then, So yeah, I've taken a view of life that, okay, let's go back a step. I used to be the Norfolk referee training coach. Okay, I did it for many years. And one of the sessions we always ran was how to deal with a crap coming from the sides. Okay, some comment coming at you. Most of the time you don't hear it. Okay, because just as the players making lots of noise, when you're close to the touchline, you may hear it. Okay, so they said, well, how do you deal with that? I go, it's really, really simple. One, what was said. Okay, now if a guy's 50 meters away yells forward pass, ref, you can edit that out and say he's talking bollocks. Okay. However, if somebody is saying something you think I've got that wrong or I've missed it, okay, two things. One, take it on board. Two, work harder, sort it out. By the end of the game, they'll have forgotten. But don't try and take on the crowd. Don't yell at people. Okay, there are different aspects. I will tell you a slight quick story, if I may. Again, teaching these guys, there's always some guy with just, gives you abuse. So I worked out this technique. It is check him out, and normally be wearing white trainers. So you stop the game, you tell the captains you're about to deal with this, you call this bloke onto the pitch. Now you're filthy, he's in white trainers. You call him on in his white trainers onto the Monday rugby pitch, okay? And you explain to him what's going to happen. And he goes, you can't do that. I go, it's really simple, okay? If you go on like this, one, I abandon the game, and B, I report you. So please leave the playing area and we'll get on with it. So I did exactly this when Diss Colts were playing Southend Colts, sort of semi-final of the Eastern Counties, bloody good game of rugby. And this guy's on my back. Hold up. So go through this process, send him off, call the captains over and explain the thing. The Southend captain says to me, that was my father. He said he's a pain in the arse. He's been on our backs all season. We've been looking for a referee. Thank you.
Are you different in your referee role to how you are in everyday life? Is there a different version of you that takes on the referee role?
Yeah, yes, there is. There must be, because you have to be more assertive. I mean, you wouldn't, to use the phrase, the referee is the sole judge of law and fact. Okay, right. In a discussion with you, if I said to you, I'm the sole judge of law and fact, you go, you know what, swivel, sit on it. Right. So it's a different thing. I'm on a pitch to manage a game of people, to create as good a game that we can create out of this. So 30 guys and spectators and all the rest have as much enjoyment as they can get, and I get a buzz from it as well. You don't behave that way in your day-to-day life with your partner, your dog, or dog you kick. That's different. Remember, we have multiple personalities, and that doesn't make us Machiavellian. We just, depending on the circumstance. I mean, if the Queen suddenly popped up into your office, you'd be quite deferential. Well, king now, but quite differential, and you'd be shocked. You'd probably be completely speechless. I don't know why I use that example, but we are multi-personality.
Yeah. I mean, and how do you set aside like any bias? How do you manage that? Or is there any? Do you feel that? Do you feel that differently? Do you find it easy to be impartial?
It's extremely easy to be impartial. However, again, back to being a referee coach, we have a short session of how do you influence a referee? And of course, they go, "Oh, you can't referee." Yeah, you can. It's really simple. It's the team that are nice to me, as opposed to the team that are on my back all the time. The time I'm on my back get nothing. Okay. Yeah. The team that are nice to you might get the benefit of the doubt if it's a tricky call. All right. Might get the benefit of the doubt. Whereas the team are a bunch of on my back. Nah, forget it. Not interested.
I suppose that's human nature, isn't it? Whether it's deliberate or whether it's just a kind of intuitive thing. I guess it's human nature to be amenable to people that are amenable to you.
Yeah, exactly. And again, trying to referee a game of rugby, it's a very interesting psychological experience. Yeah, it teaches you huge amounts about yourself, about other people, how you don't always catch it, but you can spot someone, the red mist is coming, and you just, if you get a chance, you go, cool it.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
Or you say to the captain, number 14, he's about to boil. Just chill him out. Yeah.
What do you think does that? Because I haven't played team sport for a while, and I'm a runner, and no one really sees it in running because it's totally internalized, and you don't really have direct competitors. But I remember in team sports when I was younger, I was quite volatile, and I can't really think what caused it, other than it was sort of like this. I struggled with it. I found quite a lot of pressure to that team sport. There was quite a lot of stake, but I couldn't tell you why I would react. I've actually got a lump on my head from hockey. I think it's on this side, and it was from a tackle where I was really red misting. Yeah, is there anything you notice in terms of why people get into that state where they've maybe lost a bit of that control?
I think it's a combination of things. I'm not going to say anything too revolutionary here. First of all, it's the pressure of playing the game. It's competitive. It's designed to be that way. Whether someone has red mist in hockey, which is less contact than rugby, which is a contact sport, people can have red mist on a squash court. Sometimes, people arrive at the game in a bad place because of something happening in their lives. Sometimes people are geeing each other up. It can always be a bit macho, slapping each other on the back and what have you. And yet, you're playing an intense physical sport. You have to be prepared. I mean, if you use the parallel, and it every time I think about this, it just makes my stomach turn. But can you imagine First World War, officer blowing the whistle, and now you've got to go up the steps into no man's land and run against somebody that's probably going to kill you. Jesus wept, red mist, other stuff.
It's interesting, actually. I think about that quite a lot. I kind of, I love war films, and whenever I watch the war films, there's people perhaps similar in my age-ish, or at least I've been that age, and I think, would I have done that, or what drives you to do to walk up that ladder and to do that? I find that fascinating. If I could ever wind back the clock or travel in time, I'd like to travel and see how I'd react in that situation.
I have an answer to that. My father, in the Second World War, was a Gordon Highlander. Okay, but in spite of my very English accent, I'm 100% Scots, born up in Scotland. But as you can tell, I sound like an Englishman. And the Gordon Highlanders, the British Army over centuries have realised that if you're going to have a fight with someone, put the Scots up front. They like a fight, It's reasonably true. Okay.
Yeah, it's well documented in films. Yeah.
Yeah. And Ben, anyway, my father was part of the British Expeditionary Force in northeast France, and he got shot, by a machine gun, and the machine gun took the top end of his thumb off, went in roughly where the belt buckle is, and out the back. Okay, so not the reason why you would know this, but an entrance wound is a bit like putting a little finger into a piece of plasticine. Okay, the back looked like a car crash. It's just, yeah. So his front was just a small hole, and his back was just a lattice work of, mess. Okay, but clearly, so he got severely wounded, lay there for a whole period of time, and I eventually got found by the Germans, and the rest is history. I won't go through that. But the question was, what makes you do this? Okay. And he would refer to the difference between bravery and courage. He said, you never want to work with a brave officer because you'll killed. Yeah. A courageous officer who thinks about the risk, does what, etc., etc. He said also, remember our era, and if you compare 1940 to 2020, how people think about duty, people think about king and country and so forth, is entirely different. Yep. And then they were doing their duty. That's what they knew they had to do. That's what was required. And if you think about the people of the First World War, it's even worse. You know? And yet you'd think roughly 20 years after the end of the First World War, why anybody would want to go to war ever again. And yet they did. Okay, Germany wasn't too friendly. It was pretty aggressive. There are lots of reasons. We don't have to rehearse history, but it's a mindset. And in the First World War, I think they called them Powell's regiments, where people from a village or people from area, so they were working for each other. They wanted to be brave for each other. This is all well documented. I'm sure you know about that. But it's frightening and it's scary.
Yeah, I think I had a moment with the Russian-Ukraine war where I don't know why it was relatable, but I think what it was there was everyday people were having to sort of fight. And I think I did manage to sort of get that sort of put myself in that position, and would I? And I thought absolutely being a father now would have been a massive driving factor. So I can kind of see it. But I guess we're quite comfortable in our lives in this part of history, and it's just hard. I think when you sort of you watch these war films and you think, how did they find the courage to do that?
If you separate, I watch a lot of the PBS historical war histories, okay, which are largely factual reporting as opposed to a movie. Yeah? And they clearly they don't show a lot of people being killed because they weren't allowed to do those things in those days. Yep. But the need to do what they did was incredibly powerful. I would argue that were you in Ukraine right now, father, partner, children, what have you, you'd probably say, you know what? I'm not that keen to go up front. Okay, I've got too much to lose. And I think that's, I say this, my partner is Ukrainian. We met 15 months ago. She has lost colleagues who in the war. If a plane or a helicopter goes above our house, she'll come to me for a hug. She can't handle it. Although recently, in the last few weeks, a couple have got, and she said, I haven't reacted. Maybe I've got over it. So it's quite challenging stuff.
Yeah. No, I just find it really interesting. It's something that's always, I think, I grew up in the 80s when the nuclear threat was sort of like this. It was always in the media, wasn't it? And they used to have these images of families hiding under a table when the bomb was cut. It was like, what would that do? But I guess it's something that I've always thought about. Right. Okay. I want to get to the bit that are sort of if we wind the clock forwards a little bit, and I mean, your son really stitched you up, because the example I very jokingly gave was, I want an octogenarian that's jumping out of aeroplanes still, and I want to understand why. So you're definitely not that old, which is disappointing, but we'll run with this. What has been your attitude to growing, I'll say older, because you're definitely not old.
No, I listen, I'm not offended slightly. I am old. Okay, if I compare my lifestyle compared to my father at 72, I have to say he died at 74 from cancer. He smoked all his life. Yep.
Right.
But he wasn't fit. He wasn't able to do the various things, etc. that he probably would have wished to do. What's my attitude? My attitude is, it's again a trite phrase, but you're a long time dead. This isn't a dress rehearsal. You don't get another go at this. I have this ridiculously eclectic lifestyle. Okay. So on the professional side, I'm a chartered accountant. I work in financial services. I'm an FCA regulated person. I work with an AIM company, PLCs, and it's very complicated technical stuff part-time. Okay. Makes a nice living for not very much effort because it's so specialist. Okay. I'm now a retired referee, but I was a senior referee, and we talked about that. Okay. I took up hunting on horseback 20 20 plus years ago, before the ban, and then we've been through all the ban, and then it's all now legal, and not everybody behaves legally, but we do. Okay.
Yep.
And it's the most extraordinary experience trying to ride. You watch a professional jockey, say at Aintree, or say at Newmarket, which is flat racing, and it's basically a sprint from A to B. Yeah. Where Newmarket, it's a sprint. Sorry, at Aintree, it's a sprint from A to B with big jumps, although the jumps are not as insane as they used to be. Okay. All these are professional horses, professional jockeys, etc. We're doing a similar thing in a completely amateur world, not on a prepared course. So whatever is in front of us, okay, we have to. If it's a ditch, we jump it. If it's a hedge, we jump it. If it's a fence, we jump it. Okay. If it's a fucking mud, we go through it. And you're on horseback for anything up to 5 hours. Right? So you need to be fit. Horse needs to be fit, etc., etc. And it's the most incredible relationship with a horse. Now, you might say, how do you get a relationship with a horse? Well, you do. Okay. Using a parallel with a human being is not quite right. Your horse carries you. The horse knows his job. You're not there to cuddle up with a horse. You're held. No, my horse knows I'm looking after him, feeding him, etc., etc. I've had until recently schoolmasters. Now, a schoolmaster, as it sounds a mature horse, been there, done that, looked after me. I bought a 6-year-old, basically a teenager, right, in horse terms, okay, who's green. And I was pushing him on a training park past his point of patience. And he dumped me. Okay? He dumped me. Okay. And the fall wasn't particularly spectacular. I landed on my neck and almost broke it. So it was the landing that killed me, not the fall. So what makes me do that? It's a bit of it's an adrenaline rush.
Okay.
Years ago, I taught Tom and 2 of his best friends, twin girls, to ski, and they became extraordinarily good skiers. Yeah. And even now, I still ski at a high level, off piste all the time. Is it an adrenaline rush? Yes. Do I get twitchy bum syndrome? Yes. I get far more than I ever used to, because I'm not as fit and strong as I was. So take all that lot and now throw into the mix. I've spent the last 20 years dancing tango.
Brilliant.
It makes no sense whatsoever. There's no obvious thread. And yet a partnership with a woman on the dance floor is as intense as it is with my horse. Okay, if we fall over the dance floor, we are unlikely to break something. Okay. If I get trodden on by a horse, that is certainly going to hurt. Whereas I get trodden on by a partner, it's not. And yet it's a partnership. The two are different kinds of partnership, but it's very much a partnership, making something happen. And with a horse, it's all communicated differently through your body, your hands, through your legs, your seat, etc., and what's going around you. And unlike a human being, we can walk down a track and nothing particularly happens. If a piece of grass over here goes like this, the horse can go sideways, and you think, what? You know, I mean, years ago, I was riding with a friend, and our horse went sideways, and she landed on the deck. And it was like a margin, 10-foot wide margin, and she goes, "What?" I go, "I have absolutely no idea." He suddenly went sideways. He saw something that wasn't there, and they're animals of flight, so that's what they do.
So it's not a conscious rebellion, the way that you're sort of engaging with these risky activities against growing older. It's
No,
just
it's
an extension of how you've sort of lived your life, and this feeling that life is a limited time frame and you're cramming as much as you can into it.
I'd say the latter part is not true. I don't think consciously about that. Okay. I'm aware of it if somebody asks me the question, but each one of us gets his or her buzz out of doing something. I like being physical. I like doing sport. I didn't ride a horse until I was 45. I ride with ladies, most of them. It's, by the way, you probably have in your mind's eye that hunting is a man's sport and so forth. 90% female.
Really?
90% cheaper. Oh yeah.
That's very interesting.
And I
Wow.
ride with
Okay.
some ladies who in their day have been at Burley or what have you, and they are top dogs. And they're just the most beautiful balanced riders. And you ask them, how were you when you first went hunting? Someone like 2.5 on a lead rein with their mother. And there've been generations doing this. And I didn't ride a horse until I was 45, so I'm sort of coming from behind. But it's a very interesting experience with these. You're doing it with people who are just so much better than you are,
Hmm.
and yet they're kind and they help me out. And when I have a drama, like you don't mess with them, but they're just it's extraordinary.
What would make you stop?
A major injury.
Okay, but nothing other than that. Not the potential of a major injury.
Okay, I'm right there. I'm there right now. My osteopath says if you have another fall like that, okay, and you survive, okay, I'm going to treat you again, clearly, but if you get back on a horse, I won't treat you again. I'm telling you now. Okay, she's giving me a message. I am aware that if I had another fall, I mean, my friend who was with me, her daughter was over there with another kid, and I was trying to get my horse over this jump. And my friend was about 20 meters away, and she said to me, "Dick, I heard the crack of your neck when you landed." Uh, and I was as unwell as I ever have been in my life. I could barely walk and so forth. It was
Yeah.
pretty unpleasant. So if you have a major injury, and with this new horse, I'm working really hard to ride him well, and hopefully not fall off, or if I fall off, have a good landing this time. I mean, last season I fell off 4 times.
Is that
Um,
all?
the irony is that we have a cup for the people who fall off most often. It's clearly a fun cup, yep. And the three highest entries, of whom I was second, were all over 60 years old. And the answer to that is we ride more often than everybody else. We probably ride more aggressively, and we're
Yeah.
all guys, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ladies don't seem to fall off that often. Yeah, so uh, I am worried. No, I'm extremely conscious that I have to get this partnership right with this horse,
Hmm.
so that kind of accident doesn't happen again. If you're spun, you lose. If you could jump some, you clip it, and you fall over, and the horse could land on you. Yes, that's desperate. Okay,
Hmm.
um, but most of the time when I fall forward because of rugby and so forth. I'm reasonably compact. Well, I'm tall and compact, and I know how to fall and I handle it. But when you get spun, you go this way and you can't even see what's coming, and next thing you know, there's blinding pain in your head. So, in answer to your question, a major injury.
Yeah, I think it's kind of where this came from was when I was doing my PhD. It was on older people, and when I talk about that, I'm probably talking more about 90 onwards. And I tried to find a photo of someone who's 90, I don't know, out jogging or playing tennis or doing something at least a little bit risky and active, and I found nothing. And then at the end of my PhD, which was about 4.5, 5 years later, I did find something. It was a lady running a marathon who was well into her 80s. And I cried. I watched the video. It was 2.5 minutes and I cried. And then I had this moment of thought where I was just like, that's so sad that you can't find these sort of images of people who are growing old but embracing some level of risk. And also that we become a bit parental about older people, which if I was older, I'd find incredibly patronizing and limiting as well. So I
I
guess
th-
that's where I sort of became
no, okay,
enthusiastic about this. Go
all
on.
of that's true, but I think the reason for not seeing older people doing these risky things
Hmm.
is we're not physically capable of doing them anymore.
Hmm.
You're simply at the point of limitation when
Hmm.
your body says, you know what, you can't do that anymore. For example, a good mate of mine is a retired GP, and he once said to me, "Have you ever watched older people run?" And I went,
Hmm.
"Yeah." He said, "Well, what's the difference?" I said, "Well, they run very flat compared to a young one." And he goes, "Do you know why?" I went, "Well, no. Tell me." He goes, "It's incredibly simple. Your running apparatus consists of lots of ligaments, and they're
Hmm.
like rubber bands. And you keep using this rubber band over and over and over again for 60 years, it gets a bit stretched and a bit soft. So you don't spring anymore. You can run, but you run almost Groucho Marx like with a cigar in your mouth and flat. Yep. And when I referee, I'm not springing around the park, but I can keep running and running and running and running. But there comes a point in each of our worlds, and hopefully my tango world will be the last to go. Yep. Whereby you physically can't do it anymore. So you have to stop.
Yeah, but I suppose my point is that it's an attitudinal thing. So I accept that I'm probably not going to find my 90-year-old jumping out of a plane or running a marathon. Well, I could actually probably find a marathon one.
Actually, may I interrupt you?
Yeah,
you will get the odd 90-year-old jumping out of a plane for charity jumps.
Yeah.
They exist, most definitely. I know
put that out as an advert. If anyone knows one, please contact me. Yeah. But yeah, I suppose what I see in healthcare is perhaps an overcorrection in risk, attitudes to risk for people that are growing older. A lot of my friends in the running club, this is have cardiac incidents. They'll have like, fairly minor heart attacks. And it's really encouraging to see them 6 months later running again, and not having that level, like yourself, getting back on the horse. It would be very easy, I imagine, to say, okay, that was close. I'm going to sort of cash in my chips before it gets serious. And I kind of like that you didn't do that, even though there's inherent risk in what you're doing.
It's a need that you have. You do, other people, we have this deep down need to go out and do something. I mean, occasionally veterans game, a guy 50 or 60 years old, typically a ex-front row, massively overweight, okay, will come on the pitch and play for a short period of time. And everybody's happy with him doing that. He gets muddy, he's got his grandchildren there or what have you. And I look at him and think, is there a paramedic? Is he going to have a heart attack? Am I going to be asked to carry him off? Please no. And generally they don't get hurt, and they don't spend very much time on the pitch, and generally everybody's very happy with what's going on. And they have this enormous need still to be macho. I mean, and they will be back in the front row because that's where they want to be. I was a rugby player, was a runner, and the more intellectual side of the game.
Yeah, tell him that. Okay. Wonderful. There's a lot in it. It's always clunky to start these things, and it's always clunky to try and sort of wind them down at the end. But I've been asking people to think of 3 words that might sort of summarize their attitude to health or how they view health. I don't know if you've thought of any of those 3 words.
Okay, a little bit of notice. I could have given you perhaps better 3 words. Vital, continuous, and work.
Vital, continuous. This is me writing them down.
Yeah, I understood that. So vital, meaning it's an absolute critical element of your ability to continue life. It's vital. You need to take the right steps. Continuous is you got to keep doing it. And work is you have to work at it. If you do nothing, you get nothing. Simple as that.
Flipping love that. That's brilliant. And what I love actually is this is about the 5th interview I've done. They're all different. And each time I always thought it'd be the same thing. I thought everyone was going to say family. Everyone was going to say, but I think people think on a deeper level about health. And it's very individual. So yeah, thanks for your time, Dick. That's been fascinating.
Could I chuck a couple more thoughts in?
Yeah, of course. You can speak for another hour if you want.
No. I don't actually. I just 2 more thoughts, or maybe even 1. No, 2. People ask me, how do you get to 72 and you're reasonably fit and so forth? Well, if you look at Tom, okay, I'm a smaller version of him. Okay, he's grown. I've got skinny little shoulders. He's got his maternal grandfather's shoulders, and he's a big bloke. But throughout his sporting life, he was tiny. So my point is, if you inherit good genes, okay, that's a great place to start. Lots of people are not lucky enough to inherit good genes. And the second part, which I ask, is I've never done drugs or smoked. Yeah. again, historic reasons, but I've never done either of those things. And so I haven't messed up my body, and I'm lucky enough. I've had a whole raft of accidents, but nothing that's killed me so far. So again, that's a critical element of this. So it's luck, it's genes, and looking after yourself. And if you do that, you might get it to life can be fun. Jason, it's been a pleasure.
It's brilliant. It's so interesting, and what a fortuitous conversation I had with your son Tom. So thanks for taking the time to speak with me.
Please tell Tom, okay, tongue in cheek. He said I met your father, and he's not the big arsehole that you told me he was. It's a pleasure. Take care.
Thank you so much. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.